and how it's controlled and what all of the different parts do in order for blood to be transported through. So we know that cardiac muscle is involuntary. And so we also say that it is self-excitable. And it's called automaticity, meaning that it's going to all basically be contracting as a unit in order to push the blood in one direction through all of the chambers of the heart. Cardiac muscle contraction is similar to skeletal muscle contraction with the calcium, etc., but it does contract a little bit differently. So we say that the heart itself has an intrinsic conduction system, meaning that it has basically an electrical stimulus that is going through it in order to stimulate all of those different muscle cells. So there are autorhythmic cells. They initiate action potentials just like anything else, and they have unstable resting potentials called pacemaker potentials. Now, the sequence of excitation, you guys do need to know all of the different parts. It's fairly easy to understand what's going on, but the very first message that your heart gets from your brain goes to the sinoatrial node, or the SA node. We also call this the pacemaker. Everybody has a pacemaker that is making sure that your heart is beating with a regular consistency. And so it's going to send impulses about 75 times a minute. That's, an average. Not everybody's resting pulse rate is 75 times a minute. Then the message is then going to go to something called the AV node. And the AV node is going to get that message down into the ventricles, because we're starting in the atria and we have to get the message down to the ventricles. Then we're going to go into something called the atrioventricular bundle, and that is also called the bundle of His. And there's going to be some pictures to kind of make this a little clearer in a moment. Now the AV bundle is going to split into two pathways because we have a right and a left ventricle. And so the bundle branches are going to carry the impulse towards the apex, which is the point at the bottom. And then they're going to surround both of the ventricles. And then finally, we have these things called Purkinje fibers that are going to carry the impulse into those ventricular walls. So this is what it looks like. We've got, and this is all intrinsic conduction. So this is the electrical stimulus from the brain to the heart to make sure that we are contracting our heart regularly. So here's the SA node, and it goes into the right atrium. And so the SA node is in your right atria, and so your left atria also has to contract. So what it does is it sends the message over to the left atria. So in real life, your atria do not actually contract at exactly the same time. There's just a split-second difference between the two contracting. Now then the impulse is sent to the AV node. And so the AV node is going to be that bridge between the atria and the ventricle. Then it's going to send it down into the atrioventricular bundle. And so now I'm actually in this septum between the right and the left side of the heart. So once it gets into the bundle, this is also called the bundle of His, it's going to then separate into right and left bundle branches because we have a right and a left side to our heart. Then finally, it's going to ride up each of the ventricular walls and go into the ventricle itself, and those are your Purkinje fibers. And those Purkinje fibers, you can see, go all the way into those papillary muscles that are in there attached to something called the chordae tendineae. Now, we've all watched some sort of medical show or a movie where you see an ECG or an EKG, maybe you've heard it. And what this is it's an electrocardiogram. So it's basically showing how the parts of the heart are contracting and with what type of power. So you see, in the background of somebody lying in a hospital bed with the little, kind of bloop in the back, and it kind of goes up and down as it's going across. And then when you finally see that flat line, you know that the person has passed. So each one of those little bloops on that screen means something different. So the very first little, it's kind of just a teeny tiny wave. So it's called the P wave. It corresponds to depolarization of the SA node. So depolarization means we're going to contract it. So we're going to contract the atria. So when we depolarize the SA node, it's going to tell the atria to contract. Then we have something called the QRS complex, which is ventricular depolarization or contraction. Then we finally have our last little blip called the T wave, and it corresponds to ventricular repolarization, which just means relaxation of the muscle. Now the atria is also going to repolarize, but it's masked by the QRS complex, and I'll get into this a little bit more. So you can see at the bottom, this is the ECG. So this is the electrocardiogram, and then it's going to go through that intrinsic conduction of the heart. So this is the SA node. So when the message gets to the SA node, it's going to tell the atria to contract. And so this is the P wave right here, and that is atrial depolarization or contraction. So you can see that now it is fully contracting, and here's that P wave that has just gone by. Then we're getting into the ventricles. So we're going down that bundle, those bundle branches, and we're just about ready to go to this big, huge peak called the QRS complex. The ventricles are much larger than the atria, and also the atria only have to push blood with gravity downward, and then the ventricles have to push it up against gravity. So they're going to have to work a little bit harder or contract a little bit harder. So then we have full contraction of the ventricles, and you can see this right here, this point down here is called Q, the point at the top is R, and the point on the right bottom is S. So that's the QRS complex. And then finally, when we have relaxation of the ventricles, this is the T wave. This little bloop right here is the T wave, where the ventricles are repolarizing so that they can relax. So these are ECG tracings, and we're going to go through and we're going to kind of figure out what is going on in each of these and what is wrong with the heart.